Welcome, guys, to How the Frack We Got Here, a show that takes the news and events of the week and try to make sense out of it all. I'm your host, the most Will Buchanan, and on this show, we simply are all about the facts. There are plenty of news stations out there that simply want to do anything short but inform you. Here at How the Frack We Got Here, that's all we believe in. We go up to the left, we go up to the right, we go up to the middle of independence. We go after all sides because there's more than one side of a story to everything. And you need to know it all in order to actually formulate your own opinion. And that's what we try to do here at How the Frack We Got Here. Thanks for listening, and hold on. It's going to be fun.
All right, guys. Today's date, May the 17th, 2023, and this is How the Frack We Got Here. I'm host of the most, Will Buchanan, How the Frack We Got Here. We do take the events of the week and try to make sense out of it all. Before we get started, guys, let you know that we are a news station. We do try to keep our integrity intact, try to give you the reputable sources. At the same time, we do try to watch our language, but words do fly. And also at the same time, there may be things that might be shown that might be too intense for younger viewers, so viewer discretion is advised. So, what do we have to bring on this hump day? Well, pretty much plain and simple. Let's start with politics as usual. And I keep saying this all the time when it comes to Republicans, that they, above all else, have one simple rule. And that one simple rule is, you don't go against the family. Yep, I'm talking mob rules. And unfortunately, for one almost kicked out representative, it is that very same mob rule that is probably going to wind up keeping him in Congress, despite all the many reasons he should not be a part of it.
Breaking news here in D.C. The House is a step closer to potentially kicking out embattled Republican Congressman George Santos. You see the moment right there on Capitol Hill when the House voted 221 to 204 to move this bill to kick Santos out of Congress to the House Ethics Committee. The vote was mostly along party lines. Now, remember, Santos faces 13 federal charges, including wire fraud, money laundering, and stealing public funds. He faces decades in prison if convicted. Right now, the Long Island Republican is pleading not guilty. NBC's Ali Vitale joins me now to talk about it. All right, Ali, walk us through what happens now with this resolution. It goes to the Ethics Committee. How long could this whole thing take?
Yeah, that's a great question. And really, this is the slow way to kick someone out of Congress, because there was a move to try to expel Santos from Congress just on its face. But that kind of a move requires a 2/3 majority. And several of the Republicans even that voted to refer Santos to the Ethics Committee said, hey, we would have voted to expel him outright, but I know we didn't have the 2/3 majority. So this is what we need to do to ultimately get him out. Now, I think the picture that you're seeing on the other side of the screen next to me is Santos talking just in the last minute or so about the fact that he feels that he still has the right to defend himself, that he didn't talk to Speaker McCarthy before this, but that he also voted to refer himself to the Ethics Committee as he continues to fight these charges in the courts. You've seen him before. We'll see it again. He is routinely defiant of all of the charges against him. He seems to be saying that he's not going anywhere, and clearly he's not going anywhere fast. Partly why we're seeing them take this method, Tom, is because while Republicans know that this is a dam that continues to have water mounting behind it, they still need Santos's vote. When you look at all of these Republicans from New York, but especially the one who's embattled now, they're all the majority makers. McCarthy already has such slim margins here. He can't really afford to lose a Republican. So by voting to put Santos to the Ethics Committee, it at least begins the process of kicking him out, sort of quelling the people who want him to leave Congress, while also still letting him still be an active voting part of the Republican conference, which McCarthy badly needs right now.
Yes, but correct me if I'm wrong, he's not on any committees, right? So he's only used for a floor vote. Is that right?
Correct. But frankly, that's kind of all McCarthy needs, right? Look at the way that he was able to push through things like the debt, which have earned him major leverage now in these negotiations with the White House over the debt ceiling. But we've also seen Santos be integral in passing things like the recent border package the Republicans put forward and other top priorities. So again, numbers matter. McCarthy is clearly playing a numbers game. And for now, he'd like the numbers to stay as similar to what they are as possible.
You're the best on the beat, among the best. All of you guys are the best.
Okay, so literally and figuratively, George Santos, a man who beyond at this point should not be a part of Congress at all, is going to get his stay. I mean, the man has been found lying, has been found a fraud. Oh, I'm sorry. Allegedly. Nothing's been convicted as of yet, but the evidence is staggering. At the same time, he is doing what all the Republicans have done. We're not going to vote him outright. We're going to send him to the ethics committee because this is the whole process. And I keep saying this. Republicans need all the votes in the House they can get. If Santos is one of those votes, you best believe they will do everything they can to keep him in power, even as guilty as crap as he may be. And we're not surprised by this. But if I was a Democrat, or if I was the president, I'd point this out. I would simply say, you want to see the true face of the Republican Party? There it is. That they don't care about your interests. They care about power. They care about stature. They care about getting their stuff through. And even though George Santos may be guilty as shit, they will still keep him on because it's a vote for them. And going to the ethics committee, which, by the way, they could recommend expulsion. But again, it's amazing how we keep expecting Republicans to do something right. Because to expel anybody at Congress, it takes 2/3 of the majority, especially if it's in the House. Because Santos is a House representative. It takes 2/3 of the House to expel him. All Democrats voted for him. All Republicans voted to keep him there. That alone should tell you everything about the Republican Party as it stands right now. But it's a slow crawl. And like I said before, Republicans are going to do everything they can to keep every vote that they can for them. But trust me, believe it was a Democrat, they'd be screaming on Fox News. But speaking of Republicans, and again, I cannot believe we're going to be talking about this man again, because we talked about North Carolina Lieutenant Governor Mark Robinson before. If this man, if Kanye had an uncle who told him all this crazy conspiracy theory mess, it would be him. Now, for all those who don't remember, this is the same guy who not only talked about black people in a way that would make, not everybody who's black is for everybody black, if that makes sense. All skin folk ain't kin folk, as it was always said. This man turned around and sat there and said, and I cannot believe I'm saying this because, yes, he is one of the front runners for the 2024 race, sat there and said that we lost so many freedoms during the civil rights movement that he sat there and said, and I quote, the civil rights movement was a communist plot to subvert capitalism and used to subvert free choice and where you go to school and things like that. So many things were lost in the civil rights movement. So many freedoms were lost in the civil rights movement. They shouldn't have been lost. He said it in a podcast episode. Now, that alone is like, well, that's just CNN. Okay.
Take a look at the so-called civil rights movement of the 1960s.
Mm-hmm.
How the socialists, how the communists used that to manipulate people in this country. How they use it to subvert capitalism, and how they use it to subvert free choice and going and where you go to school and things like that. You look at what they did with that. I mean, it's amazing that people can't see it. I mean, so many things were lost during the civil rights movement. So many freedoms were lost during the civil rights movement. They shouldn't have been lost.
Straight from the horse's mouth. And I know for a lot of people, like I said, for those who were raised or who lived during the civil rights era, that is a big ass slap in the face. So many rights were lost during the most tumultuous era, or arguably one of these tumultuous times in American history. So many rights were lost. Yes, I can't imagine how many black people that were hosed on, attacked on, bombed on, spit on during protests, during just speaking, yet so many freedoms were lost. Yeah, I wonder what world Mark Robinson is living in, because the messed up part about this is some people actually believe that mess. And this is why I keep saying it's, like I said before, I don't usually consider myself Democrat. Do I vote Democrat? Yes, because again, look at your options. I consider myself progressive, but in no way in hell would I ever sit there and consider myself Republican. Because unless, and I said this before, when it comes to black people, Black people who are conservative, y'all have figured out a come up. That's the best way I can say that. Every black person that speaks conservative talking politics and points is a come up. Because you know why? Because y'all have figured out, those who are black conservatives, by the way, or speak conservative points, or just flat out love Trump, y'all have figured out a come up that is amazing. Because those people, because the Republicans are needing assistance with minorities. Who knew? Like, really? Who had a clue that people that spoke out about minorities, people who openly spoke out against minorities, do everything they can against minorities, needs minorities to stay in power? Some people have figured it out. Candace Owens has figured it out. Jesse Peterson has figured this out. That one last standing black lady on Fox, black woman on Fox News, she figured it out. And it's all for the bag. They don't believe this mess. It's for the bag. I said it once and I'll say it again. If I, at this point, turn around and start talking conservative politics tomorrow, I would be on Fox News right across from Sean Hannity on the in 24 hours or less. Because they need that sounding board. Those people that are on that conservative spectrum need a person like me to validate their bigotry. Oh, I'm not racist because here's Will. Will listen to everything Will listens and wholeheartedly agrees with me. I can't be racist if a black person believes the same thing. As dumb as it is, that's their logic, and it's shocking. Even more so, Clarence Thomas. Thank you, Willie. Thank you, Willie. Clarence Thomas, another one. They all went with this route and believed the bag, and that's how they got to where they are. They don't believe half the stuff there is, because look at Candace Owens. Candace Owens was Fox's brown little girl until she sat there and said, you know what? I don't think Hitler was that bad. And then Fox News said, ooh, talk about the black people all you want to, but when you start talking about a guy who committed genocide against the Jewish people, we got to let you go. And that tells you Fox's line in the sand. But it also tells you that a lot of people, like Mark Robinson, who's coming up, and understand, he's running in 2024 for office. Are these the same type of people you want making policies? Again, if you're in North Carolina, I'll be paying attention. That's all I'm saying. But moving right along, guys, I want to cover this story because this story is weird. Because we encourage our future generations of children to stand up, to speak out against wrongdoing, to be activists, to protest, to stand up and fight for their rights. One student does this and is completely justified and got suspended for it.
Missouri, a 15-year-old high school student got punished for doing what many would argue was the right thing to do and constitutes whistleblowing. 15-year-old Mary Walton recorded her geometry teacher using the N-word in class. Instead of being praised for capturing a very troubling and problematic incident, she was given a 3-day suspension. CNN's Adrian Broadus looks into why.
Video shared on social media shows a high school teacher using the N-word at least twice in a Missouri classroom. Mary Walton, a 15-year-old student, disturbed, began filming.
I'm not calling anyone. I understand. I can say the word.
That was May 9th. The teacher was initially placed on administrative leave. The principal calling the language, quote, inappropriate and inexcusable. A week later, that teacher has resigned. A statement from Springfield Public Schools announces he is, quote, no longer employed. But Mary was also punished, suspended for 3 days over the recording, the harshest penalty for this type of offense under school cell phone rules, her lawyer says.
We've asked them to lift the suspension, let her go back to school immediately, and apologize. Mary saw something that she believed needed to be reported.
According to a news release from Mary's attorney, Natalie Hull, the geometry teacher interrupted a conversation between students about the slur, using the word several times before the recording starts. Students explain its derogatory context before one cautions the teacher about using it.
Say right now, as a teacher, if you want to keep your job, this isn't the threat.
About 50 seconds into the short clip given to CNN by Hull, the teacher notices the camera recording him.
Why are you saying? No.
The school district says its discipline is, quote, confidential per federal law, but noted that the student handbook limits inappropriate use of electronics and considers the identification of minor students when disseminating video. The school district also prohibits, quote, recording of faculty or staff in the classroom without prior approval and recording, quote, acts of violence. Hull claims that the policy is problematic and it has a chilling effect on students like Mary looking to hold authority figures accountable.
They could get in trouble for capturing evidence of a crime.
Now, what's crazy is the whole idea of it all. And again, I give that student credit that, number one, an educator should know off the bat, especially if you're not a person of color. And even though I don't like the N-word, I don't say it, it's not me. But if you are not a person of color, I will say this. If you are not a person of color, just don't. Do yourself a big ass favor. Don't. You know it's wrong. You know it's insulting. You probably will catch hands from the nearest POC. Don't. Even though the teacher's like, well, I can say it. I can say the word. Yeah, you can say it. I guarantee if that was a room full of black kids, you wouldn't dare say it. Because, again, I wouldn't fault them children. I always say violence is never the answer, but at the same time, I'm not going to fault them children. Just like that one student shouldn't be faulted because, yes, that teacher, for lack of better decision making, decided to sit there and be ignorant. And yes, it should be reported. Yes, it should be recorded. Despite the whole, well, in Missouri, we have laws against our faculty being recorded, and our punishments on how we punish these students is confidential. Isn't that just a little bit creepy? Isn't that just a little bit creepy that a school system will sit there and say, well, our punishments, we don't talk about that. That's confidential. Why? Because you, outside of suspending the child, there's nothing really more you can do outside of suspension or expulsion. At the same time, you're not even addressing the fact that the teacher, which I'll say, well, they're no longer employed with us. Imagine if that video was never recorded. Imagine that video was never hit social media. Just for 1 second. Because let's be honest, in a day and an age without video or without immediate evidence, who are people going to more likely to believe? And I hate to say that, but who are people more likely to believe in that scenario when it becomes between a teacher and a student? That yes, you can have a whole classroom say, yes, Mr. So-and-so said the N-word. But without evidence, who are they going to lean into? It's almost like, you know what, it give you guys a good example. It's like going to your HR of your job. Say something happens at your job that you weren't cool with and you want to report to HR. You report to HR thinking that they're going to get to the bottom of this. They're going to figure it out, not realizing HR's main job is to make sure the company is protected. Sure, your rights being protected are somewhere in the mix, but ultimately HR is there to protect the company. And a lot of people who have dealt with HR know exactly what I'm talking about. So why am I saying that? Because in the same sense, this school is doing exactly what your HR at your job would do. Make sure that the company is protected. But at the same time, realize that the student is a small integral part. Oh, we're going to suspend the student because of the current rule set up, not because of the fact that there's no exception to the rule. See, that's the part where I don't get. And I'm not saying only this because it's in the South. It's a Missouri state school system. I mean, it can happen in Tennessee. It can happen in Kentucky. It can happen in Georgia. It can happen in North Carolina, South Carolina, Florida, Alabama. It can happen in any of these southern states because that's exactly the kind of setup that they have. And that's the problem. That instead of us acknowledging the whistleblowing, which we encourage children to do, we punish them, but we ignore the fact that there are people who have been put in place to educate them are showing their ignorance. And by showing their ignorance, they may acknowledge that, hey, it's completely okay to say what I said because I said it. And like I said before, had that been a room full of black kids, he would have never said it. But again, that just lets you know how messed up education is. And speaking of another story about messed up education, imagine you are a teacher using film to educate a class. And again, understand what I'm about to say. It's Florida. It's a teacher in Florida showed a Disney movie to students that apparently some parents have an issue with. I wish I could make this up.
Teacher in Florida says she is under investigation by the state's Department of Education after she showed her students Strange World, which is a 2022 animated Disney film that features a character who is both biracial and gay. CNN's Isabel Rosales is with us now. And Isabel, I understand you just spoke with the teacher. Under investigation for what?
That's the question right there. And the teacher has a lot of questions as to how this process is going to play out, what is next for her. Her name is Jenna Barbie. She teaches fifth grade in Hernando County, which is a part of the Tampa Bay area. And she says that this all happened during the standardized testing time in early May. She played for her fifth grade class that Disney movie Strange Worlds because the plot of it was tied to their current lesson plan, which was the environment and ecosystems. You mentioned that it does feature a character who is biracial and gay, but the teacher, Barbie, says that the movie was not sexually inappropriate in any way. And in fact, she thought she was following the policy because she had signed permission slips signed by parents of every student in that class to allow for the viewing of PG movies. And that movie was not listed as an objection. Now, we did reach out to Hernando County Public Schools, and they did confirm that the Florida Department of Education is investigating Barbie after a parent complained to them that this movie was inappropriate. That parent also a school board member. Now, they sent letters to the homes, to the parents, and this is what they said in the letter. Yesterday, the Disney movie Strange World was shown in your child's classroom. While not the main plot of the movie, parts of the story involves a male character having and expressing feelings for another male character. In the future, this movie will not be shown. The school administration and the district's professional standards department is currently reviewing the matter to see if further corrective action is required. So last week, Barbie actually showed up to a school board meeting and confronted them during the public comment section. School board member Shannon Rodriguez was there, and she acknowledged that she was the one who called the Department of Education. Her daughter was in Barbie's class, and she says that that movie was inappropriate and that Barbie, she claims, did not follow policy because she did not get preemptive approval to show that specific movie. This is what Rodriguez had to say during that board meeting.
It is not a teacher's job to impose their beliefs upon a child. Religious, sexual orientation, gender identity, any of the above. But allowing movies such as this assist teachers in opening a door, and please hear me, they assist teachers in opening a door for conversations that have no place in our classrooms.
And here is Barbie's response. Listen.
I was never trying to indoctrinate my students by showing them something that had differences and diversity. I was showing them a movie that related to our curriculum and our earth, that also taught many valuable life lessons that also correlate to our Florida Best standards. However, I understand why that parent was upset, as I had told her before, but I do not believe I made a mistake by showing this movie.
And CNN has reached out to Rodriguez and the Florida Department of Education for comment. Barbie says she's received considerable support from parents and students alike. She's trying to navigate the next steps. She doesn't really know what could happen to her about 2 weeks left in the school year now.
So the messed up part about all this is, Strange Worlds, a Disney movie. A teacher decided that, hey, lessons can be learned from Strange Worlds. Let me send out parental slips to the parents saying, hey, I want to show this movie to the kids. I want your approval. Permission slips come back. Everybody seems okay. Movie gets played. And somewhere, somehow, a Karen gets offended. Oh, how dare you show this movie that, despite the fact that it's talking about climate change, how we affect the planet, you're worried about one male character who is biracial and is also bisexual expressing their feelings toward another male character. That's your hang up? And this is the part that honestly kills. This is the part I just don't get with people. I mean, let's not forget the fact in Florida that, dictator over there, DeSantis, has sat there and, got his Don't Say Gay bill passed. Forget the fact that he single-handedly rewritten African-American AP history. Forget the fact that he's also had the public education system remove certain books, those books being from people of color, from LGBTQ plus authors, because of fear of indoctrination. See, that's the big word that conservatives hang on. Whenever it comes to anything Disney or something else that doesn't fit their hyper closet religious abuse patterns, it's indoctrination. How dare you show this to our young children? Let me go ahead and say this, and I say this because a lot of people need to hear this. Watching LGBTQ plus, watching a drag show doesn't turn you gay. Watching a movie with LGBTQ plus actors in it doesn't make you gay. Living next to neighbors who are different than you. Maybe there's two moms. Maybe there's two dads. Maybe there's two dads and there's two moms. Maybe it's a covenant. Either way, it doesn't turn you gay. It doesn't work that way. There's not a magical pill or a punch out there or a doctrine out there that will somehow turn you gay or turn your children gay if you come in contact with it. It doesn't work that way. And yet, there are a good number of people out there that believe that, well, we can't show this because it'll do what? Open a conversation. It will cause kids to think. It will cause kids to develop cultural sensitivity to others different than them, to have compassion for them, to actually treat them like human beings, like we should be doing anyway. Is that what we're all scared of? Because it's a Disney movie. I remember in 6th grade, they showed us Glory. And I realized Glory was literally about a all-African regiment from Massachusetts that was literally on a suicide run. And it's like, oh, well, you're going to see attempts of slavery. You're going to watch a man getting whooped. We watched Denzel get whipped. The one tear coming down. Nobody said a word. White and black kids, white, black, and everybody else in that classroom all watched that movie. Did we get an understanding of slavery? Yes. Did it make us immediately angry toward white people? No. Although some white people did get kind of quiet during that movie, Sam, but that's neither here nor there. The point I'm making out of all this is that it is amazing how the word indoctrination gets tossed around so much that you honestly, it's starting to affect, it is starting to affect how we're teaching our kids, because we need to be teaching our kids acceptance. We need to be teaching our kids compassion. We need to be teaching our kids to accept those who are different from them, especially from the people of color side, like myself, that I have to teach my children and other children that yes, you're going to find there are going to be some idiots out there that are not going to like you simply put because of your skin tone. But it is my hope that future generations get it right more than we did. But over a Disney movie, are you freaking kidding? I'm like, Strange Worlds isn't bad. I mean, you can take your pick, because at this point, I don't know what folks are expecting when it comes to indoctrination. Like I said, though, I keep on saying this. I said, if you really want to look at indoctrination, look at Christian schools. That's all I'm going to leave it at that, because there's a lot of people not ready for that conversation, because that's one of the main reasons why I want to point out, if you want to see indoctrination, go that direction. That's all I'm saying. But moving right along, guys, I did want to cover this story as well, because gun violence is a big thing. I'm sorry. Hey, Midnight Comics. Oh, thank you. Really appreciate it. But I also want to get this too, because gun violence is definitely on the rise, especially across the nation. And this is a scary trend I'm noticing from responsible gun owners, that for responsible gun owners, your guns are appearing in your children's backpacks in school, much like this couple here. A mother and fiance who have a 7-year-old. The 7-year-old brought an unloaded gun to a Michigan elementary school. The gun was discovered in the 7-year-old's backpack. The mother was charged with abuse. The fiance was charged with irresponsible use of a firearm. But both of them swear up and down, oh, the gun was safe. Oh, the gun, there's no way our 7-year-old would have been able to get a hold of the gun. And yet, he pops up in school in his backpack. And in this day and age, where mass shootings are becoming way too common, where gun violence is on the rise, and we keep asking our local, state, and federal governments to do something about it. And yet we're seeing more and more news about guns that are getting into areas they shouldn't have. And like I said before, I used to sit there and wonder why parents homeschool their kids. Now, I don't joke about it no more. I see why they do it from a place of safety. Because that right there, and again, this comes from a person who owns firearms. For me, it's always safety. I do not want my children having access to them, nor should they know where they are or things of that nature. That's just me. It's a whole level of safety that only me and my fiance know where the weapons are, not my kids. Because it's one thing to go to school with a gun in your backpack. Imagine if you're a person of color and you get caught with a weapon in school. You may not come home that day. Just because we're seeing this escalation, but also we're seeing an escalation in irresponsibility. Irresponsibility that honestly makes me wonder, especially in the fact of the matter, especially when it comes to fast food services, because again, you want to talk about irresponsible gun ownership. This next story, I don't blame fast food, especially if you go to a Sonic drive-in. They may do things differently now because of this story.
Matthew Davis's family and friends are trying to make sense of his shooting death. It happened Mother's Day weekend during his work shift at the Sonic restaurant in Keene, Texas. Dr. Joyce Harge is their spokesperson.
They are truly devastated to have lost him.
According to police, Sonic customer, 20-year-old Angel Gomez, started urinating in the restaurant parking lot. Davis confronted Gomez, which led to a physical fight. Officers believe that's when Gomez's 12-year-old nephew fired an AR-style .22 caliber rifle from the car, striking Davis 6 times. Dr. Harge, a school teacher, warns her students about gun violence.
Letting them know that the gun, when they pull the trigger, it's not going to come back.
Davis's family shared these photos of him over the years with his son. The 32-year-old's mother wants people to know, despite her son's troubled past with the law, her son was back on track.
He tried to make sure he did things right this time in his life. He would go to work early.
Davis's family says he loved working as a cook at Sonic, where now the restaurant marquee reads, "God is our refuge" on one side and "Trust in the Lord with all your heart" on the other, something Davis's family will be doing as they plan his funeral.
It's heartbreaking that, again, a 12-year-old, how does a 12-year-old have an AR-style rifle in their vehicle and decided to use it on a fast food worker? I mean, that's the question we should be asking. Number one, how in the world did a 12-year-old have a weapon that can kill in a car? And even more so, why was it loaded in the car? But again, that is a story, but it just brings back, like I said, about gun violence. It makes no sense about how gun violence is and the fact that we're seeing an escalation. We are truly seeing an escalation in gun violence, especially when it comes to AR-style rifles, because just as we just got through talking about a mass shooting, we had another mass shooting just this week.
This video showing the suspect in the deadly mass shooting in Farmington, New Mexico, roaming the crime scene.
There's a person laying in the middle of the street. He's just walking in circles with the Glock with an extended clip.
4 officers arriving to a chaotic scene spanning roughly a quarter mile Monday morning in this neighborhood near the 4 corners where New Mexico, Arizona, Utah, and Colorado meet. Investigators say the 18-year-old suspect used 3 different weapons, including an AR-style rifle during the attack.
Be advised, I got several people down.
Neighbor Jeff Clark heard the gunshots from his garage.
I was looking around and noticed that a minivan with 2 elderly people with the windshield blown out, shot out, were dead in their seats.
The gunfire also wounding several others, including a state trooper, before officers confront and kill the suspect, according to investigators. At least 6 homes and 3 vehicles were reportedly hit by gunfire.
So this is the room, went through right there.
Jolene and her family took cover.
It was traumatic to be barricaded in your laundry room with your daughter, who's 1.
Police still searching for the killer's motive. The community in mourning.
The 2 officers' injuries appear to be non-life-threatening. Both officers have been released from the hospital. Now, this attack marks the 225th mass shooting in America this year, according to the Gun Violence Archive.
The 225th mass shooting this year. And again, an individual, and here's the thing before the gun nuts and amosexuals get started. Oh, well, criminals will always have access to guns. It's almost verbatim when they say it. But look at the last mass shootings. They're not done by criminals. More than likely, in this case, as we find out more about the shooter, because trust me, more will come out about the shooter in the coming days, because his life will be dissected for the world to see. But a lot of these individuals who are seriously disturbed still have access to firearms. Still can get firearms. I'm living in a state right now in Tennessee where I've yet to be proven wrong, where it is too easy to get firearms. Actually, Tennessee is known for 2 things. Number 1, it is way too easy to get a driver's license because they don't really test you. And number 2, it is way too easy to get firearms. Gun trade and knife shows, because they're not commercial sales. They are not inclined to do background checks. If you go to any of these gun trade knife shows in Tennessee, again, for all those that say it, all those think I'm lying, please correct me, because I know you can't. If you go to one of these gun trade knife shows, as long as you have an ID, as long as you have money, you can walk out with damn near whatever you want. And people wonder why they're popular. They're popular because they don't include a lot of paperwork. They don't. They really don't. But I use that as an example because a lot of people sit there and say, well, criminals can get their hands on guns, not realizing that in the areas where the strictest gun laws are, the guns are being tunneled into those areas from states that have the loosest gun laws. So imagine that if you had a gun pipeline from the South to Chicago, would explain how all the guns in Chicago wound up there for one of the strictest gun laws in the United States. But they don't want to talk about that. And that's the point I keep making, that with these individuals that get access to guns, and we should be horrified, especially on the fact of what a judge in Virginia did. A judge in Virginia decided to literally decided to sit there and say that the law that was put into place to basically ban the selling of handguns to 18 to 20-year-olds, which means they were knocking the age up to age 21 to buy firearms. The judge in Virginia said that the banning of handguns to adults, young adults, is unconstitutional. Yes, a federal judge, of course, if you want to know who that judge is, U.S. District Court Judge Robert Payne in Richmond, Virginia, sat there and said that it would impose limitations on the Second Amendment that do not exist with other constitutional guarantees if we were to exclude 18 to 20-year-olds from the Second Amendment's protection. And that's the thing that always has bugged me, that he goes on to say, because the statutes and regulations in question are not consistent with our nation's history and tradition, they therefore cannot stand. Are you kidding me? That's what he said, that the Second Amendment's protection, the right to bear arms against a tyrannical government, also to form a local militia. Where in that subtext that it said, oh, only must apply to 21-year-olds? And that's the thing. And that's why I keep telling folks, you know what? I'm going to add to that for the Second Amendment. I think for the Second Amendment, there needs to be an addendum. And that addendum is you have to be 21 years or older to obtain, to buy and to obtain and possess firearms. You have to be 21 years up or older. We do the same thing with alcohol. You have to be over 21 to buy alcohol, right? You have to be over 21. 18-year-olds, well, they find their ways around, but legally, you have to be over 21 to buy alcohol. You got to be over 25 to rent a car. But why is it when it comes to firearms, we just simply say, you know what, the law is what it is. But the law itself, the amendment doesn't prevent anything. For all those that, like I said, they always like to say that, well, the right to bear arms shall not be infringed. Do you even understand what you're saying yourself on that? Because the simple fact of the matter is, the law in Virginia tried to curb gun violence by saying, you know what, 18, 20-year-olds cannot purchase firearms. Great thing. And then a judge sat there and said, well, I'm looking at the Second Amendment, and I don't think that's right. Because it goes against the Second Amendment, because there's no other limitations in the Second Amendment. So do you think that maybe we need to kind of make some adjustments? But it's amazing to me that as we try to be progressive and move forward, that you'll see these individuals that just, whether judges, mayors, politicians, all in general, it amazes me so how they always there and say, well, we must respect the Second Amendment. The Second Amendment the Second Amendment actually has more protections than children in schools do. And that is a scary thing to say. Because as I've said before many times on this podcast, there are many ways we can curb gun violence and many ways we do gun reform. And yes, that does mean stricter laws. That means stricter procedures. That does mean that you're going to do more because of the fact that society has pulled us to this level that we have to take such extreme measures to curb violence. So in other words, blame the idiots that make it harder for everybody else. But I digress because as much as we say we want to curb gun violence, we see laws being put in place that are going to help curb gun violence only be turned down because somebody believes that an 18 to 20-year-old believes they should own a gun. Which in my opinion is, if you can't rent a car, you shouldn't be able to get a gun. But I digress. Speaking of things that don't make any sense, guys, I know you guys have heard about these so-called alcohol drinkers who believe they're going to turn gay because their favorite beer companies are coming out in support of transgender LGBTQ plus people. Well, Miller Lite has decided to join the Bud Light group, and of course, people are offended.
Here's a little known fact. Women were among the very first to brew beer ever. Centuries later, how did the industry pay homage to the founding mothers of beer? They put us in bikinis. Wow. So today, Miller Lite is on a mission to clean up not just their shit, but the whole beer industry's shit. Miller Lite has been scouring the internet for all this shit and buying it back so that they can turn it into good shit for women brewers. Literally, good shit.
Bud Light sent me possibly the best gift ever, a can with my face on it.
Oh, God. I hate identity politics with a passion. I really do. Human beings made beer, okay? And some human beings look good in bikinis. It's like, what are we doing?
Okay, so first and foremost, fuck Joe Rogan. Because he is one of those guys. He reminds me of those guys that have such a big following, but because of the fact that he believes that he's being so so questionable, so intelligent, so going against the grain that folks are like, hey, me too. No, Joe Rogan's a fucking idiot. So let me just go ahead and say that. Pardon my French. But going back to Miller Lite commercial, it's the same like Bud Light. I mean, I'm not a beer drinker. I have plenty of friends that do. But guys, it's just like, what is it? And I have to ask this question. Whether it's a Disney movie, whether it's a beer, why are so many out there? Why are y'all offended? If the beer, just because the beer has a rainbow can, just because the beer, a company behind the beer is trying to change the way advertising has worked for the last 40 or 50 years, just because a beer is trying to celebrate something other than that's different than you, why are y'all mad? I mean, when Bud Light came out, I'm not gonna drink Bud Light. Bud Light supports the gay people. Gay people drink beer too, fuckers. That's all I'm saying. But you guys get mad. You dump your Bud Light, you shoot at it, or buy a case and then shoot at it, or you'll see it in a store and attack it like it's an actual person. I don't understand it. I don't. So what Miller Lite has sat there and said, Miller Lite had the funny thing about that commercial, all Miller Lite did was shine a light on it. That for the longest time, beer commercials and advertisements, what do? Objectify women. Women in bikinis, women in Hooters outfits, women doing things that are trying to get your attention because, as we know from many years of advertising, sex sells. It does. Explain MTV, explain VH1, explain reality shows. Sex and controversy and scripted reality sells. So what did Miller Lite decide to do? We want to change that. We want to change the fact of how things are happening, and at the same time, we want to be progressively moving forward. I can't knock Miller Lite for that. Like I said before, even if I did drink beer, that's not going to stop me from enjoying my beer. That's like saying, you know what? Let's make it this way. If Jack Daniels tomorrow came out with rainbow labels. Let's try this again. If Jack Daniels came out with rainbow labeled liquor, would that keep me from drinking it? No. If Terramana Tequila decided to come out and say we support transgenders, still not going to drop me, still not going to keep me from enjoying tequila. Because you know why? Because I enjoy the product. Let's make it easier. If sodas, if Coca-Cola, if Pepsi, if Dr. Pepper, if all the soda companies out there decide to start doing transgender marketing or LGBTQ plus marketing, would that stop you from buying the product? Hell no, because you enjoy the product. But again, it's a company that's just making its own decisions. And it amazes me so how you get those out there who the alpha males, I guess you can call them. I don't know if you can call them alpha males or not. I usually call them fucking idiots. But the alpha males out there, right? Oh, well, I'm not going to drink Bud Light because Bud Light's for gay people. So I guess you're going to drink that natural Keystone Light that you find at the gas station that's basically piss water that nobody drinks? Because you're so American, you're so patriotic that you can't stand the fact that you just might be a little bit of a nationalist. You're so patriotic that you're nationalist. But at the same time, you're going to be mad because a company decided we're going to put a transgender person on the beer can. Again, it goes back to what I said. It is amazing how those that scream indoctrination don't understand the definition of it. Because drinking a beer that has a rainbow label on it won't make you gay. No different than watching a Disney movie in an elementary classroom. It doesn't make you gay. That's your own fear. And at the same time, a little bit of self-improvement is needed. Because if you think everything's going to turn you gay, most would think that you're probably about 80% of the way there already. Just pointing that out. But moving right along, guys, I did want to cover this story as well because I keep saying this. As strikes happen and end, I want you guys to notice something because this strike in the San Francisco Bay Area where teachers just ended, but understand the reason why it ended in one of the things they got out of that strike.
Oakland, where schools will be back in session tomorrow after a week-and-a-half-long strike. The new contract includes higher wages as well as funding for so-called common good proposals, which have been a major sticking point.
This strike has never simply been about us being able to put food on our own tables, but making sure that we were able to provide for student not only services, but also shifting the way in which we are able to provide instruction to feed the minds of these students.
And those common good issues are intended to improve overall conditions for low-income students. They include help for unhoused students and more resources for historically Black schools. Also under the deal, students, parents, and educators will all get a say in the district's decision-making going forward. But as John Ramos reports, there are still plenty of unanswered questions.
And again, it is amazing how whenever there's a strike, that how it ends is simply put that, well, we finally gave them more money. And that's all mostly people want when you go on strike. If you're not getting your benefits, if you're not getting your pay, if you're not getting the things that you would normally should be getting for your job, and you go on strike for them, and they're granted to you. Strike's over. If only employers and those who are well off would understand that. If only you paid your employees well enough to where they have a livable wage, to where they have benefits, health insurance, things of that nature, guess what? People will work for you. That's why companies who pay well have stacks of applications, and companies who pay less will always have jobs open. Who knew? And especially if you're union, definitely go union, because do not believe, and we're seeing this because Amazon is a great example of this. Amazon hates unions. They do. Amazon hates a union at any distribution site because the moment a union is formed, guess what? That means that Amazon has to play ball with the labor board. And Amazon, although it is the biggest e-retailer in the world, it doesn't want unions because it means that it'll have to play by a certain set of rules instead of them going, well, we already pay you the most. We pay you the most in your city and state. You get benefits day one. You get guaranteed employment as long as you show up. I don't know why you need to go on strike. You can come talk to us. We're like a family. Keep in mind, any company that ever sits there and tells you we're like a family, run. Run, run, run. Just because you don't want to be a part of that family. It's not the family you're thinking of. It's like the family from The Shining. But going back to my point, unions work because they guarantee to make sure that you get the pay and benefits that you deserve. You cannot depend on corporate America to bargain with you single-handedly because corporate America has too much power on their side. And unfortunately, if you try to go alone, you are literally just a cog in a very big machine. And that does not amount to a hill of spit. But proud for those teachers for actually getting their pay and bonuses as they deserve it. But again, moving right along, guys, I know we see a lot, especially on TikTok and other social media, about folks who are going into these stores and just looting. I mean, outright looting. And I understand for the employees don't get paid enough to sit there and protect the goods. If I see somebody going out the door with a bag full of stuff, go. Because what can I do? I don't get paid enough to be a store clerk / security guard. And in this case, the story that I'm showing did have a security guard. And that security guard was armed. And as you can tell, it did have a very tragic, well, not really a tragic ending, but really a lesson learned for all those that are looting stores and still doing it because this girl found out the hard way.
Video showing a situation that unfolded in a San Francisco Walgreens last month. Security guard Michael Anthony confronting 24-year-old Banco Brown, suspected of shoplifting, according to police. A scuffle ensues. Then a short time later, that security guard can be seen shooting and killing Brown. District Attorney Brooke Jenkins on Monday saying she will not file charges at this time due to insufficient evidence.
There is nothing to rebut his statements regarding the fact that he acted in self-defense.
Video interviews with the security guard were also released by the DA's office Monday.
The whole time we were wrestling, she was saying that she was going to stab me. And that's what really put the fear in my heart. She walked towards the door, but then she turned around and advanced back towards me. And that's when I already had my weapon drawn. And when she moved towards me, that's when I fired one shot.
During this interview with police, Anthony referenced having to keep Brown in a chokehold type position so Brown wouldn't harm him because Anthony said he didn't have any handcuffs or other way to restrain Brown. Legal analyst Stephen Clark commented on that.
I think what's very problematic is the use of the chokehold, what appears to be done here by the security guard on Mr. Brown. That in and of itself can be deadly force, and you've seen that time and time again in police use of force cases.
Clark says what is likely to be closely looked at going forward is video of the scuffle and the use of force on Brown during those moments and before the fatal shot. D.A. Jenkins says that video is just part of this case. Witness accounts and an interview with the security guard were all used in her determination to not file criminal charges.
We have to believe at the time that we charge a case that a jury of 12 would convict, not let's just charge the case and see what happens.
Security guard Anthony going into more detail about what happened and has happened in the past.
It's just a few items. It's not worth fighting over. Normally, I'll let the individuals go with it. But this time, it was different because she wanted to fight me back. I didn't want to do that. No.
Why did you do that?
I felt like I was in danger. I felt like I was going to be stabbed.
Now, I can't knock that. I can't. I mean, he's an armed security guard. If you've never done a security job before, and it's getting harder these days, like I said before, you've seen the looting that has happened in several different stores across the U.S. And if you're a security guard, especially an armed security guard, you got to make a decision. Now, normally like I said before, if I was a store clerk at any of these retail or grocery store locations, let them go. It ain't worth it. If someone walks out of there, if someone is willing to literally risk life for a few items, let them go. To me, it's a let them go situation. It's like it's no point. What are you doing this for? In the big picture scheme of things, Walmart or Target or Best Buy or any of these stores are not going to give you a medal because you stopped somebody that had $5 to $20 worth of items on them, or the person that decided they're going to try to walk out with a TV. Yeah, happens. Walmart, those places are not going to give you a medal for that. So I get that the security guards have a hard time, even more so that when you have those that want to fight, because a lot of people who loot are starting to get bold, really starting to get bold. But with these armed security guards out here, again, I tell people, number one, if you're going to loot, it's not worth it. It ain't. These stores are hiring armed security guards, and these security guards are doing their best to not want to pull the trigger. As you can hear from that guy, it's like, look, I was going to let her go until she decided she wanted to fight back. And what can you do in that situation? Because your job as a security guard is to make sure that you protect the premises. And if you are an armed security guard, that means that you at one point have to decide if lethal force was necessary. And again, I feel for the guy because he was just doing his job. It was the woman that decided to come in there and decided that today was the day she wanted to F around and find out. And again, if you're going to loot, I hope you don't. I hope you don't loot, because all stories don't end with the people just walking out the front door. As you've seen with that one woman, her life ended that day. At the same time, that security guard's life is affected because now every decision that he made in those mere seconds is going to be analyzed. It is going to be dissected. And granted, I give the DA props for not pursuing this, because, like she said, if we put this in front of a jury for a court case, how's the jury going to go? They're going to say security guard did his job. Not much to convict when the jury's already made their mind up. That's all I'm saying. But as we move along, guys, back to our politics for a second. The debt ceiling. Yeah. So you basically have the Democrats and Republicans playing a game of chicken with the debt ceiling because by sometime in June, America will not be able to pay its debts and may default. We've heard this one time during the Obama administration because, again, Republicans would rather see a black man fail to succeed. And now, with, again, another Democrat, Joe Biden, at the helm, you wonder, has things moved any closer? Check your magic 8-ball on that.
With the clock ticking towards potential catastrophe, no deal yet between President Biden and House Speaker Kevin McCarthy over the nation's debt limit.
There's still work to do.
But Tuesday's White House meeting between the president and congressional leaders may have broken new ground.
There's an overwhelming consensus, I think, in today's meeting, the congressional leaders, that defaulting on the debt is simply not an option.
It is possible to get a deal by the end of the week. It's not that difficult to get to an agreement.
For the first time, Democratic leaders are conceding a bipartisan compromise will be needed to break the impasse, likely combining an increase in the nation's borrowing limit with spending cuts.
We all agreed that the only path forward is to reach a bipartisan agreement anchored in common ground.
That means a so-called clean debt limit increase with no spending cuts attached, favored by the president and Democrats, is now off the table. The White House says President Biden has appointed 2 top aides to lead negotiations with the House Speaker's team. While the president will depart for the G7 summit in Japan today as scheduled, he'll cut his overseas trip short, skipping a planned summit in Australia, returning to Washington Sunday to deal with the crisis. Because the global financial system relies on the dollar, economists say damage from even a short-term default could be disastrous. With the government unable to pay its bills, Social Security checks, tax refunds, and veterans benefits could all be delayed. Interest rates would spike, and if the market takes a big hit, as expected, the value of your retirement account could plummet.
I mean, the stakes are incredible. It would just crash the world economy if the debt ceiling is not lifted. The clock is ticking. Already, aren't there costs associated with just this brinksmanship, just the fact that we're going up to the wire again?
Well, yeah, I mean, history says so, and so does the Treasury Secretary. Back in 2011, the last time we had a major standoff like this over the debt ceiling, stocks plunged 20%, and the U.S. credit rating was downgraded for the first time in history. And that's when Congress passed a debt ceiling increase on the very last available day. And Secretary Yellen said yesterday that the Treasury is already seeing the impacts of this brinksmanship, her words, on the markets. She's watching for hits to things like business confidence and borrowing costs as the negotiation drags out towards that deadline. Savannah?
Yeah, ironically, this.
Now, what they're not saying in that is just that, again, the debt ceiling has always been a game of chicken between Republicans and Democrats. Now, it's funny that they sit there and say bipartisan. We must be bipartisan in this. You keep saying that, but realistically, you don't. It's amazing because Republicans have sat there and said, oh, well, we can raise the debt ceiling, but we want spending cuts. Keep in mind, Kevin McCarthy and others have already sat there and eyed 3 things: Medicare, Medicaid, Social Security. And they all want work requirements. They want the age of Social Security to be pumped up again because as we're living longer, they want the age to be pushed back longer. That's their logic. At the same time, they want work requirements. So if you're on Medicare, Medicaid, or Social Security, if the Republicans have it their way, they want you to be working. Why? Because Republicans have to answer to their donors. They have to answer to the companies that fund their campaign trips. Because right now those companies need workers. And a lot of Republicans, especially if you've been paying attention to the podcast, Governor Huckabee Sanders in Arkansas makes it easy for kids to be working longer as long as they have the parents' permission. We've discovered that companies like McDonald's and animal processing plants have kids working midnight shifts, kids working longer than the 3 hours they've been given, especially if they're in school. Because if you're in school, you can only work 3 hours at a time. Because again, you have school and you also are a child. Yet we see more kids are working almost adultish hours and in areas that we never would not necessarily see kids. Republicans have no issue with child labor as long as you don't call it child labor. But that's what they want to do. But if I was Democrats, there is an easier way to solve all this. Again, with inflation, it's amazing how everything's going up, but yet pay, minimum wage is still down. Cost of living isn't matching what we're getting. At the same time, all I can sit there and say is y'all keep giving the Pentagon a blank check and it's never passed an audit. Just pointing that out. That's all I'm saying. But again, we will follow that story as it develops. As again, June the 2nd is when we're going to be getting to the midnight hour on whether or not America may finally default on its bills for the first time in history. Beyond that, guys, the last 2 bits of news I have, starting with the first one, we might finally get an answer on dictator Ron DeSantis, because he actually may be the Trump 2.0 that I've been talking about was coming for the next presidential run.
Tonight, Florida Governor Ron DeSantis is inching closer to a presidential run. Today, his political staff moved into a new base of operations in Tallahassee, according to the state GOP. NBC News first to report that DeSantis will now need to announce within 2 weeks because the move triggers disclosure requirements. It comes as DeSantis today ramped up his not-so-subtle swipes at Republican frontrunner Donald Trump.
I think the party has developed a culture of losing. I think that there's not accountability.
In his latest grenade in the culture war, DeSantis signing a bill into law today barring Florida's public colleges and universities from spending on diversity, equity, and inclusion programs.
DEI is better viewed as standing for discrimination, exclusion, and indoctrination.
Over the weekend, DeSantis visited Iowa, a critical early state.
The time for excuses is over.
Even taking advantage of Mr. Trump having to cancel a Saturday night rally in Des Moines due to a tornado threat.
Requires commitment to principle.
Making a surprise visit there himself. Meanwhile, the former president is stepping up his personal attacks on a fellow Republican.
The problem with Ron DeSanctimonious is that he needs a personality transplant, and those are not yet available.
While most polls show DeSantis trails former President Trump in a Republican primary, he's widely seen as Mr. Trump's strongest rival.
All right, Gabe Gutierrez joins us now live in studio. So, Gabe, how does Governor DeSantis plan on attracting Republicans looking for a change while peeling away some of Trump's supporters?
Well, Tom, he is hammering this idea that he is the best option to stop Republican losses, a pitch he's now making to major donors. Several sources tell NBC News that DeSantis and his wife have hosted a series of dinners with them.
So what's crazy is, you guys, I have been saying this the whole entire time. If you thought Trump was terrible, the next version of him is going to be worse. And we're seeing that because dictator Ron DeSantis is basically Trump 2.0. And yes, Trump is still around until something gets indicted on him that's federal. But he's still around for the 2024 race. But again, that's Trump 2.0. This man in his home state has literally turned it back to the 1940s, actually. Like I said before in the earlier part of this podcast, he has made life harder for LGBTQ plus people because they can't talk about their identities. He's made it harder for African Americans to learn about history out of the fear of some people being indoctrinated or woke. He has turned around and defunded diversity programs in universities. I mean, and a supermajority. And keep in mind, Florida has a supermajority there of GOP. So a lot of things that DeSantis wants to push through, he can get with no issue. But because of everything that's going on, and let's not forget his immigration bill that he pushed through, to where companies will be charged $10,000 for every undocumented worker that's found, and how every undocumented worker has suddenly left Florida. And not just the construction sites, the hotels, resorts, the custodians, the food industry, pretty much any job that no other American wants to work, those undocumented immigrants have left. And DeSantis wants to run for the country. That alone is effing scary. But like I said before, he's Trump 2.0. He's what's coming next unless something is done. That's all I'm saying. But the last story, guys, I got, unfortunately, is a tale of shooting yourself in the foot and reloading. And sad to say that this is where I say, well, you probably know the story, but I'm going to play it anyway.
Memphis Grizzlies star John Morant has been suspended for a second time after once again appearing to flash a gun on social media. The video circulated on Saturday night. It shows Morant with what appears to be a handgun while he's riding in a friend's car. Yesterday, the Grizzlies said they were aware of the video and suspended Morant from all team activities pending league review. In March, Morant was suspended for 8 games after he was seen holding a gun inside a nightclub on Instagram Live. A representative for Morant did not immediately respond
to this pendejo. John Morant on video showing a gun again. And this is the part that I'm trying hard here, because he turns around and sits there and says, I quote unquote, I know at this point a lot of people have supported me. This is a journey and I recognize there's more work to do. My words may not mean much right now, but I take full accountability for my actions. I'm committed to continuing to work on myself. Bruh. And this is the part. I have a hard time understanding these gentlemen who come in to life-changing incomes playing professionally to where money's not an object anymore. I do not understand. Like I said before, did I have basketball dreams? Yeah, I did. But I come on now, I was realistic. I wasn't as committed as a lot of these guys are to the craft. Still love the game though. But let's be honest, less than 10% play college basketball. Less than 5% make it to professionals. That less than 5%, their lives change. And to anybody that's in those, anybody that's a part of those areas, they all know your incomes change, your lifestyle changes, your friends change, the whole thing. It's a different mindset. Now, as me and a friend we once used to sit there and say, the struggle food of ramen noodles will always be a fan favorite. Will always be a fan favorite. Because ramen was there for you at times when money wasn't as available as you like it to be. You had to make that dollar scream a little bit to stretch a couple of weeks between here and payday. But when you do come up off that ramen and you have that steak, that first time you bite into that buttery, melt in your mouth steak and realize life is cool, you're on the gravy train with biscuit wheels and money's not a problem anymore. Because money's not a problem anymore, guess what? That's 90% of your stress gone. You can enjoy life. You can finally get that life. You finally had that life that you wanted so much. And now, because of an idiotic move, you may see all that go. Not once, but twice. Because a lot of people are sitting there saying, well, why is everybody coming down on him? He didn't break any laws. He didn't do this. Here's the problem. Here's the problem when I hear that mess. Because when you flash, and I know a lot of kids think it's cool to flash guns on social media. Let me tell you something. It is the dumbest thing you can do. Number one, it can be used against you with law enforcement. Because anything you put out there on social media is out there forever. It doesn't go away. Ask Beyonce in that one picture she tries to get scrubbed away. It still makes the rounds. But when you are flashing guns on social media, when you are wanting to be a hood star so bad that you might actually get your wish. Not only do you get caught once flashing guns and then talk about, well, I should have never done that. I'll be better. I'll do better. And then the second time comes around and you're doing the exact same thing. I'm like with Shannon Sharp said on Undisputed. It's sad. I don't feel remorseful for the guy, because you are the people who literally come into high levels of income that can change you and the people around you and your family's life to a positive. And you will fumble that bag because you want to be a hood star so bad that when reality hit you and it's like you can lose multi-million dollars from your basketball contract. You can lose multi-million dollars from multiple endorsements. The fact that you are taking your own money off the table right now is not a warning bell to you, but you will still act a plumb nut And then at the same time, I'm worried about I'm more mad at your friends, because if I'm your friend and you are on a come up, my job is to protect you and your come up. My job is to basically be the no person in the group and say, dude, this ain't a good look. This ain't a good look. You don't need to do this. You're gonna jeopardize everything that's going on right now. But you also have people coming out in defense of him saying, well, there are worse people out there doing worse things than John Morant's doing. But here's the problem that a lot of people don't understand. When you're a person of color, you are scrutinized 3 times more than the average person. If you do right, we won't know about it for 2 years. If you do wrong, we will know about it in 30 seconds. Think about that for a second. A black person could do numerous charitable things. We won't find out for at least 6 months up to a year. That very same black person, if they turn around and did some nefarious, heinous mess, we find out in less than 30 seconds. Why? Because ratings, because clicks, because traffic. Whenever a person of color is convicted of something and it's in a negative tone, it gets more attention than a black person doing something positive. For example, a woman, not a lot of people know this, but a black woman did come up with initially the essential vaccine for the coronavirus. Right? Not a lot of people knew that, but you knew about the girl with the Gorilla Glue girl who put the Gorilla Glue in her hair. We know about her. We knew about her journey. We knew that, like I said, when it comes to black people, that's the thing. And that thing that a lot of people don't get, that when you're black, you are scrutinized twice as heavy, and you are judged. You are judged before you are found innocent. That's why a lot of people need to think that if you're in John Morant's position, you got to think, and you got to think about every situation you put yourself into and wonder, is this worth jeopardizing the bag? Because right now, John Morant will be lucky if he's still in the league next year, all because he want to play hood. Guess what, John Morant? You might get your wish. But we're going to go ahead and move on to our Feel Good segment, guys. As usual, how the fact we got here, we usually cover a lot of things that are doom and gloom, sometimes make you faith in humanity. But hey, it is hump day. Tomorrow is Friday Eve, which is Thursday. So we're going to leave you guys out with some good vibrations. And hopefully this one is a story of a tale of 2 brothers serving the armed forces, which I think is kind of the positivity we need tonight.
Tonight here, America Strong, the U.S. Army 2-star general and the family he never knew he had. Martha Raddatz returns tonight with what's happened since.
We are at a retirement ceremony at Fort Knox Army Base in Kentucky. Service members, family, and friends filing in. But this isn't just any retirement ceremony or any family. We first introduced you to Army Major General Robert Edmondson II after his life-changing discovery. Adopted as an infant in Germany by a U.S. Vietnam veteran and his wife, Edmondson would join the military, just like his adoptive father. After a DNA test a few years ago, the 2-star general astonished to find out he had 2 younger half-brothers, one of them incredibly in the Army as well, a Colonel, Eric Jackson. Unknowingly, they had both served as captains with the 82nd Airborne Division. They were in the same fraternity, and we spoke with them after finally coming together.
I know emotion and Army don't necessarily go together, but can you please tell me what it was like to finally meet each other in person?
Emotional in a way that it's really hard to put into words, to be honest with you, Martha. But if I could sum it up in one word, that one word would be love.
A number of emotions came to mind. Number one, I was raised as an only child. So I immediately had siblings.
And there are 2 of them, his brother Brian.
The first thing I can see is his mannerisms, his smile, his eyes. They all reminded me of my dad.
Since then, the families have gone on vacations together, football games together, and now celebrating family milestones together. Colonel Jackson is about to retire after 35 years of service. the band, the cake, and the Major General, his brother, by his side, pinning on the Distinguished Service Medal. Then the final salute. A handshake and a hug. Everyone in the room lining up to honor and thank the entire family.
Being brothers in arms, as well as biological brothers, makes the relationship that much sweeter.
There's nothing wrong with being adopted. There are many of us that are out there, and the fact of the matter is, you can succeed.
The incredible.
You gotta love stories like that, especially the fact that you can find your family members and be able to reconnect. That in itself is a beautiful thing. So hopefully it brings some positivity to that. So that's gonna do it for this podcast, guys. Thank you for all watching, for liking, for letting people know this is live. I certainly appreciate that. Some shameless plugging before we do get out of here, guys. I do want to shout out to my friend Vaughn at BigVZA on all social media. You can definitely check out his music channel where there's plenty of free music there for you to use. He will not spam you or ban you like other people on YouTube do. And if there's music that you want to purchase, definitely check him out. BigVZA on all social media. Of course, that's for myself, guys. I'm BlackBox447 on all social media. You can find me just about everywhere. I usually post all reviews or anything that I play, that I read, that I watch. Gym stuff, gonna do a couple push-ups. Also, at the same time, guys, a link. Let me actually make that a little bit bigger at the bottom for you guys to see. If you copy and paste that link into your browser, we'll take you to my link tree that has the YouTube and Facebook groups for all of my podcasts, How the Frack Got Here, Get Bit. Oh, excuse me. And of course, y'all for this podcast. Definitely like, share, and subscribe. Let people know. And again, let me know everything that we talked about. You want to keep the conversation going. Also, we are now on Spotify. We are now on Google Podcasts and Apple Podcasts. Wherever there's a podcast, you can definitely listen to my voice and let people know about it. Like I said, I just want to know. My whole idea is to grow this thing into something much, much bigger, much, much better. And like I said, just giving you the news and allowing you to be informed versus to be persuaded or indoctrinated. But yeah. Aside from that, guys, the last thing I'll say about How the Frack Got Here, it's all about staying informed. We are not trying to reinvent the wheel. We are simply giving you all the information to allow you to make up your own mind, but we do provide a logical perspective that goes along with it. We do a lot better in society once we're informed. We're progressive. We move forward. We try to right the wrongs of our past by making decisions now we should have done back then, like electing our first Black woman to the Supreme Court, electing our first Black woman to the Federal Board of Governors, electing our first Black woman to be the National Cybersecurity Advisor. All great things. When we don't learn from history, we are doomed to repeat it. That's why we keep asking ourselves, why does everything go up at our paycheck? Why do we elect different politicians but still the same old gang in Congress? But most importantly, how the frack got here. Thank you all for watching, guys. Take care of yourselves and each other. We will all get through this.